Hey everybody! In this video, we are going to learn how to create water textures with the gel press. There are a million ways to do this, so I'm going to show you just a few of those ways. This video is also part 2 of my series that started last month. I started with the grungy brick background in this card. And then I used that background gel press print technique to create die-cut collage elements of these little flowers against one of the watery backgrounds that I'm going to create in today's video. Now I am using my 5x7 gel press, and I have 2 5x7 pieces of paper. These are copy paper sheets. I really recommend using copy paper to gel print. And you can see that those are the size of my plate, and there's a reason that you want to do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is tear a wavy edge from the bottom, and you're going to want to keep this piece, and you're going to want to keep the top piece. We'll be using both of those. So if you look, when I put this down on the gel press, this can create sort of like a beach line with the water up above and maybe sand down below. And I'll show you a couple different ways to sort of mask off water later, but I'm really focused on the texture. So I have a couple colors of paint that I'll be using. I have just a real pretty basic blue, and I have a white, and I have a buff titanium, and I have a burnt sienna. So that's what I'll be using today. I have a piece of plastic set up over to the side of my gel press that I'll be using for various mixing things, to pick things up with my brayer, etc. So first, just put a small amount of the blue paint onto your gel press and brayer that out until it's a fairly thin layer. Too much paint can definitely trip you up when you're doing this technique, just like not enough paint can trip you up. Then I just rolled a little bit of white paint onto the edge of my brayer. And I want to show you just how to make little kind of swirling motions into the wet paint, just to give you that illusion that something is happening sort of at your imaginary little shoreline. So that's how I do that. And then I'm going to mask off the bottom portion of the gel press because I want that to be my sand on this first sample. So then I'll take my second piece of copy paper and just press that against the gel press. This is not a science, so don't worry if you don't get like super precise results. Here you can see where I've sort of added texture. Looks like a little wave right near the masked portion. I think that is so much fun and such a simple way to add texture without adding a different tool. So this is just going to be done with your brayer, and that makes it super easy when you are printing. Now I'm just lifting some of that extra blue paint off of the plate, and then I am going to clean my brayer because I am switching colors. So just keep a piece of paper nearby to clean your brayer on. The piece of plastic that I'm using is actually what I normally use in my art journal to protect pages underneath from what I'm doing on top. But it can be anything. It can be stamp packaging. It can be your glass mat. It can be anything. So I'm adding a little bit of burnt sienna and some of the buff titanium, and I'm going to actually just mix these with my brayer. And you can see that I'm just using half of my brayer here. And that's because I really only need the lower portion to be covered with sand. So I'll put this down. I do feel like I don't have enough paint at this point, so there is kind of a balance between having too much paint and not having enough paint, as you will see. Now you'll take the matching piece to the piece that you masked off, and you will put that down on the top part of your gel press just so you don't pick anything extra up. And then you can sort of like lift this up and sort of line it up. But like I said, this isn't a science. This is about creating a scene. So don't worry if they don't exactly line up. I know card makers like to be precise, but this is not about precision. This is about creating abstract beach art. So I will pick that up, and now I'm starting to see that some of my paint was a little bit dry. So we're going to add just a little bit more paint. It looks fine, but we're going to add a little bit more paint so I can get just a little bit more coverage on that bottom portion. So this time I'll be a little bit more generous on my plastic mat with these two colors. Now, if you live in a very hot climate like I do and your air conditioning is on all the time, you can experience paint drying at sort of a different rate than people in more humid places that maybe don't have the air conditioning on might experience. So just be aware of that you might have to experiment with your paint drying times. And it's just part of gel printing. It's just, you know, your local environment really influences the way a lot of these products work. So if your paint dries too fast, don't assume that there's something wrong. It could just be like your local situation. You might just have to adjust for it. Oh, I love that. That came out textured and perfect. You can see the little waves where it meets the sand. You can see all sorts of fun detail in there that really make it look like sand. So I'm very happy with that. Now I have that little mask piece of paper that I'm just using sort of to clean my brayer over here. That's what that is all about. And now we will add a little bit of white paint to the plate. Now here I'm just sort of dotting the paint on, and I'm going to sort of texture that with my brayer just by tapping it up and down a little bit and see if we can add just a couple little white highlights here and there. And then put this print back down, see if we can pick a couple of those up. And there you go. You get some fun white details on top of the sand, like maybe the surf has come in and it's on top of the sand like you see sometimes when you're at the beach. And I just love this. This is like the perfect little atmosphere for the beach. So fun. Okay, so let me show you a couple of other methods of getting a water sort of texture into your prints. I will clean my brayer that had a lot of lighter paint on it, and we'll go ahead and put another layer of blue paint down. Now you can just swipe your brayer back and forth to give the illusion of waves or water, darker and lighter textures that you might see when you're looking out at a lake. And then here I will just mask off the top part just to give us like a little horizon, and I'll lift some of that paint. It's going to leave some paint in the sky. You can see there's like a little bit, but basically this is like a nice crisp horizon line for my water, and I'll show you what that water texture looks like. But don't worry if the top isn't perfectly white. If you wanted it perfectly white, you could just leave the mask on there, but I think this looks more like clouds. And I love the way the water looks. It looks like a beautiful lake up against some mountains. So fun and so easy, just a couple little strokes of that brayer. So we will keep going. A little more of this blue paint. I'm going to use all this blue paint up in this video. I love this color. It's like just like the perfect kind of blue, like average blue. So now I'm swiping back and forth again, same way. Let's just make some little sort of placid waves. You can sort of tip it up and down like I'm doing here if you want them to be a little less placid and you want to make it look like there's a little bit more motion in the water. Anything that you do is going to turn out great, and it's going to look very abstract and arty and fun. So now this time I will put the mask down onto the gel press, and I'll get a second piece of paper and I will print on this, and that will give me my nice crisp line. So if you didn't like the little bit of blue in the sky on the other one, This is a great way to just clean it up and make it super crispy. And then you could stamp some little trees or just generally build your scene. But here you can see that sense of motion in the water is so much fun. So of course there's a little bit of paint left on the plate, and you never want to waste that when you are gel press printing. So I always lift these little extra grungy bits that are on the plate with white paint or something else. If I weren't immediately about to do another blue print, I would definitely put some white paint down and pick that up. And that would be a fun collage element or an item for your art journal, something like that. So never let those little opportunities go by. So now I'm just cleaning my brayer and I'm adding a little bit of white paint to my sheet of plastic here. And I'm going to just grab a little bit of that with the edge of the brayer. And then I realized I didn't make a full rotation. You got to make a full rotation all the way around. And I'm just sort of swiping that into the wet paint on the plate. Again, just another fun little texture technique. There are a million ways to do water on a gel press, but these are just a couple of the ones that I enjoy doing. So here I'll just print this entire thing. Just grab the whole scene. You can always embellish this later on with ink blending, so I could make a horizon line and make that a little bit darker. You can do all sorts of things, but to me, this looks like sort of a moody, stormy ocean with a darker sky up at the top with a little bit of light reflecting off of there. I might put a moon on it to make those even more prominent. But here's a good example of like the grungy bits left on the plate that I was talking about. I'll just pull that print so you can see what that looks like and see how much fun it is just to have just an element that you can die cut or put in the background of a card just to add some interest, and no one will really even know how you did it. It's just a great way to add texture to your projects. So here I will just lift this, and when you get the right amount of paint, when you are lifting dried paint off of your plate, when you get exactly the right amount of paint on your lift layer, your plate will be clean. But you can see here that I had too much paint on my lift layer, and so there's quite a bit left down there on the plate, including wet paint because I had so much paint. So I'll just grab another piece of paper and pull that up, and what I'm hoping is it will pull up the dried paint as well and clean my plate, and it did. It's perfect. So this also looks like a little watery background of sorts. There's my original beach scene. Here is the sort of stormy nighttime scene. And then here's the placid lake with the mountain in the background. So I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks so much for watching.